Okay, Mataji, we're live on YouTube and ready to go.
Okay, thank you, Radhika. Today we will begin with the chapter 16, how Parikshit Maharaj received the age of Kali. So, a little summary of just to recap what we've been doing. Then we are hearing now about Parikshit Maharaj. You may remember the sages at Namashranya, they had asked Sutta Goswami many questions. Now in chapter 1, they asked those 6 famous questions, but then later on, they asked additional questions. And one of the additional questions was about Parikshit Maharaj. They had actually asked 3 sets of questions. That was in chapter 4. One set of questions was about Vyasadeva. Why, after writing so many literature, why did he feel the need to write Srimad Bhagavatam with 18,000 verses when he had written the entire Vedanta Sutra and Mahabharata, which was 220,000 verses? Why did he feel the need to write about Srimad Bhagavatam? Now, the second set of questions was about Shukadeva Goswami. How his story of how he left home and away from his parents as soon as he was born, but came back as soon as he heard Srimad Bhagavatam. And what made him come to the bank of the Ganges to speak to Parikshit Maharaj when he was not really a worldly man. He was such a renunciate. He was done with material life. Why would he take his time to talk to a worldly king? And the third set of questions was about Parikshit Maharaj. What such a great king? Why did he leave the kingdom? So many citizens depended on him. Why was he cursed by this Brahmin boy? And being so powerful and empowered, why did he not reverse the curse? So all these. So now here they have been answering, starting chapter 12 actually, wherein they discussed the birth of Parikshit Maharaj. They began to answer these questions about King Parikshit, about Parikshit Maharaj. So in chapter 12, like I said, his birth was discussed. His birth was not ordinary. It kind of gave us a very good idea of who this great king was. That he saw the Lord within the womb of his mother when he was being attacked by Ashwatthama's Brahmastra, and how he never forgot that image of the Lord, and he was all his life he was looking for that form of the Lord. Then here in chapter 16, and again in next chapter that we will be discussing next week, we're going to hear about the activities of Parikshit Maharaj. And these 2 chapters are actually precursor to the following chapters, 18 and 19, which talks about Parikshit Maharaj being cursed by a Brahmin boy, and how this led to the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken by Shukadeva Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj, how as he was fasting on the bank of the Ganges rivers, and how Parikshit Maharaj vowed not to eat and drink until the moment of death. So these activities of Parikshit Maharaj, which we will be talking chapter 16 and next week 17, they show the power of Parikshit Maharaj's personality. And we had already getting a sense of his personality in chapter 12, wherein it also discussed about how he was not an ordinary person. There was predictions of how he was, what kind of person he was going to be, how he was a Mahabhagavat. And Prabhupada writes how no one can rule unless he's empowered, especially rulership of the entire world. This is not an ordinary thing. So Parikshit Maharaj, by virtue of his pure devotion, and what was his pure devotion? The fact that his ruling was a devotional offering to Krishna. And how he himself was qualified. And then Krishna could act through him. he was very powerful, and Pariksit Maharaj actually, in terms of when he was ruling, he had no other motive except to rule in a way that was pleasing to Krishna. His ruling was full of religiosity, fine discrimination, and power. Everything that Maharaj Pariksit did was on the level of purity. So there's so much lessons to be learned here. And then, so now let us hear about Pariksit Maharaj, how he received the age of Kali. As we know, the light of Srimad Bhagavatam, it comes when the sun of Krishna sets in this world. As soon as Krishna departed, Srimad Bhagavatam came. Now, Pariksit Maharaj's birth is just prior to Kali entering. So this chapter describes some of the wonderful reign of Pariksit based on those kingly qualities that was foretold. And in these verses, we'll hear how Prabhupada condemns modern civilization. Sometimes he's sarcastic, sometimes he's heavy. Why? Because he calls this a soul-killing civilization. And basically, this chapter and the next will describe the infiltration and domination of the age of Kali and the cause of Kali, why he came. So in our first slide, we're going to talk about why was Pariksit Maharaj so successful as a king? What was the secret of his success? That will be in verses 1 and 3. Text 1. Suta Goswami said, "O learned Brahman, Maharaj Pariksit then began to rule over the world as a great devotee of the Lord, under the instructions of the best of the twice-born Brahmanas. He ruled by those great qualities which was foretold by expert astrologers at the time of his birth." So what was his success? His success was not only that he was qualified, his qualification came because he was under the guidance of qualified people. And in this purport, Prabhupada will describes how even though Pariksit Maharaj was such a powerful ruler, he still took advice from the Brahmanas. And what was this advice? They were actually standard laws from the scriptures. Such people, he explains, that such people who were advising him had fine brains and were familiar with Shastra, and amazingly, they did not accept any salary. Why? Why was this so amazing? Why not a salary? It's because as soon as we expect a salary, we become dependent on that person, and naturally we have to do things or speak in favor of him. In other words, we have to flatter that person and at least agree with what he says. But these sages were actually independently thoughtful and renounced people. There's a story about how Chanakya Pandit one time, one of the kings that ruled India was Chandragupta Maurya, a very famous king, the Mauryas. And his minister was, his advisor rather, was Chanakya Pandit, the famous Chanakya Pandit that Prabhupada really quotes many, many places. And he would advise Chandragupta Maurya on all things, and Chandragupta Maurya would follow that advice. So one time he had advised him about some conquest, and based on that advice, Chandragupta Maurya had taken the kingdom back from Nanda kings, and he was successful. And one time, Chandragupta Maurya refused some advice from Chanakya Pandit, and Chanakya Pandit got angry, and he said he was leaving. And these sages, these pandits, they would live away from the palace. They would not live in the comfort of the palace. They would live actually in a very small cottage. They would not expect, they didn't take any salary. They were very renounced. And Prabhupada writes how the power of Brahman's renunciation is so strong that immediately the king had to come and pacify him and take his advice. Prabhupada writes in the purport how the Brahmins never took salaries, and so the state got the best advice without any expenditure. And why were they so great? That which will lead us into our next slide is, not only did they give protection to humans, but also to animals. So in our next slide, we will talk about how Pariksit Maharaj, what did he actually see while touring his kingdom? and how the bull and cow should be protected. Now that's text 4. Once, when Maharaj Pariksit was on his way to conquer the world, he saw the master of Kali Yuga, who was lower than a Shudra, disguised as a king and hurting the legs of a cow and bull. The king at once caught hold of him to deal sufficient punishment. So this is a very interesting point here. The story begins here, and it becomes very exciting for the children. You know how, and we can definitely show them the picture, which will be shown in a guidebook, and that kind of puts a visual image to the story. So in the purport, Prabhupada is writing how the purpose of these kings to go out and conquer the world is not for self-aggrandizement. How Maharaj Pariksit went to conquer the world, not for that, for purpose of aggression, but rather he went to see how things were going on in terms of a godly state. I mean, it's amazing how these kings were so, because they were trained so well in terms of Vedic principles. These Kshatriyas actually, they knew the Shastras in and out. It's just that they didn't preach the Shastras. The Brahman did that, but they were meant to be fully well versed in Shastra. So we can see that how their heart, they knew the purpose of their of life, of human form of life, the purpose of their rulership. They knew that. Yes, the first business was to protect, but more than that was to make sure that people were godly. Why? Because they wanted to follow the Lord's duty, the Lord's desire. Now, Prabhupada writes, as soon as Pariksit Maharaj saw that a lower class man in the dress of a king was hurting the legs of a cow and bull, at once he arrested and punished him. So now he punished him. Now that will be leading us to the next question. The sages are going to be very surprised how King Pariksit is going to just simply punish him and not kill him. The king cannot tolerate insults to the most important animal, the cow, nor can he tolerate disrespect for the most important man, the Brahmana. Human civilization means to advance the cause of Brahmanical culture, and to maintain it, cow protection is essential. There's miracle in milk, for it contains all the necessary vitamins to sustain human physiological conditions for higher achievements. Brahmanical culture can advance only when man is educated to develop the qualities of goodness. So the qualities of goodness, Prabhupada is explaining how it comes from, cow protection, how it comes from drinking milk and nourishing the finer brain tissues in our brain. So this culture cannot really be promoted without these things, without especially protection of cows, calves, and bulls. So when Maharaj Pariksit saw this Sudra, the Sudra will be explained later. It means in terms of quality, his sinful qualities, right? And when as soon as he saw this king, this person dressed as falsely as a king, mistreating a cow and a bull, he was very angry. So here it's interesting to see how how the cows and Mother Earth, how they live together. How Mother Cow here is representing. Mother Earth is representing the cow, and how Mother Earth and cow, they live together. Because Prabhupada writes in some other place, some other purport, that how the wealth that we see today in society, how the wealth, the affluence that we see is not really the affluence that is going to be permanent. Why? Because it's born from exploitation. So the affluence that comes from exploitation is temporary, and it just gives us suffering. But the affluence that comes from pleasing Krishna, from pleasing Mother Earth, by living in harmony with her, when the cows graze on the Mother Earth, and they give the cow dung as manure to Mother Earth, then that natural fertilizer, when that is used, then the products that come from that, it really nourishes the mind, the brain of an individual, whereby he can think in a spiritual way. So that's why they live together. The Mother Earth and Mother Cow, they live together. And the bull, of course, is representing the father because it's plowing the field and giving us, doing the hard work to give us those things, right? So that's a very important point that I was thinking that comes from them, how Mother Earth is representing, why is she representing the cow, and why cows were protected. And in this way, Mother Earth was protected. Right? So in our next slide, we're going to talk about how sages are not interested in such topics except for when related to Krishna. So this stems from this question that Shaunak Rishi is asking on behalf of the sages, making sure that this topic about this king, uh, confronting Kali is not just about kings. You know how this, everybody likes to hear the stories of these heroic kings and the heroic deeds, and this is something very interesting for everybody, even for mundane people. But sages are not interested. Even topics about kings, they're not interested. They are interested only in such topics only when related to Krishna. That's what's so key in these two verses, verses 5 and 6. How these sages were eager to hear about Maharaj Pariksit because he was such a great devotee and because his activities were related to pleasing Krishna. So, text 5. Shaunak Rishi inquired, why did Maharaj Pariksit simply punish him since he was the lowest of Sudras, having dressed as a king and having struck a cow on the leg? Please describe all these incidents if they relate to topics of Lord Krishna. So 2 points here. How why was he only punished and not killed? So you can imagine the times, what kind of times these were, where is somebody who is killing a cow and a bull will be given a death sentence. And that we will discuss in the next chapter, actually, more about that. Actually, this used to be the standard law that anybody hurting a cow and a bull was given this death sentence. So it was a pretty heavy thing. Why? Because people, these rulers, they understood that if Brahmanas, or which means Vaishnavas, and cows are not protected, it means simply the degradation of society. Right? Okay, so and then the next point that's being discussed here is that how they were not interested in any topics not connected to Krishna. And then Prabhupada in the pulpit explains so nicely about how Bhagavatam also deals with so much about sociology, politics, economics, cultural affairs. But because all of them are in relationship with Krishna, all of them are worth hearing. Why? Because Krishna is a purifying ingredient in all matters, whether they're money. So basically, no topic, even though it's of this material world, is mundane anymore as soon as we connect it to Krishna. And it's okay to read them. And also in the purport of text 6, he discusses about Bhagavad Gita, about the Battle of Kurukshetra. Because it has this jewel, Bhagavad Gita, it is adored all over the world. Even though the Battle of Kurukshetra is full of politics and diplomacy, but because the jewel Bhagavad Gita is there, it becomes very, very transcendental. Okay. And another point that's very nicely, I think, it talks about here is how the Lord, his feet are beautiful, right? It does talk about here. Maybe in the next one. Yeah, in the next one. So we'll talk about that later. Okay, so in our next slide, we're going to talk about how to escape, or rather, Shaunak Rishi gives the formula of how to escape death in a simple way. This is very interesting because Shaunak Rishi sometimes he gets really fired up and he speaks very earnestly. Why? Because like we discussed in one of the earlier chapters, he's not an ordinary person. He's Mahamuni, which means he's a Muni of all the other thousands of Munis. So he's capable, he's like a spiritual master to all the Munis. And so he's very, very, he's very advanced. personality, very, very advanced devotee. So here he'll talk very excitedly about how to escape death, but in a very simple way. Text 7. O Sutta Goswami, there are those amongst men who desire freedom from death and get eternal life. They escape the slaughtering process by calling the controller of death Yamaraj. So here the solutions are given in the text. Right? In other words, as long as Yamaraj is there, and he's the one who causes everyone's death, is present here, no one shall meet with death. So the great sages, they're inviting actually the controller of death, Yamaraj, to come and hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? So anyone who, naturally it means that anyone who's hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and chanting the holy name doesn't have to fear about Yamaraj coming and dragging him. So that's an important. And here Prabhupada writes a very important, a nice something very important in his purport, that how modern scientists, and that can be very nicely compared. How the formula for devotees for how to escape death is hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and inviting Yamaraj to come and be present. And what is the solution for modern scientists or other people who avoid Krishna or God? Modern scientists try to avoid death by physiochemical advancement of knowledge. But alas, the controller of death, Yamaraj, is so cruel that he does not even spare even the very life of the scientist himself. The scientist who puts forward the theory of stopping death by advancement of scientific knowledge himself becomes a victim of death when he's called by Yamaraj. What to speak of stopping death? No one can enhance the short period of life, even by a fraction of a moment. The only hope of suspending the cruel slaughtering process of Yamaraj is to call him to hear and chant the holy name of the Lord. Yamaraj is a great devotee of the Lord, and he likes to be invited by kirtanas and sacrifices by the pure devotees who are constantly engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. This is really powerful writing by Srila Prabhupada. He's so fired up, and the way he and he doesn't take any pains to put the blame where it goes, right? So but I remember reading this the first time and being so shocked at the way Prabhupada talks so in such a straightforward way, in such a frank way, right? So anybody who comes to Krishna consciousness for the first time is actually quite shocked reading the first canto, because all this entire first canto is just full of the most powerful purports, because Prabhupada didn't know that how long he was going to live. And he put everything in the first two cantos, or rather the first canto. And even then he wasn't sure that he was going to live too long. And so he put a lot of energy in these first three verses, it said, a lot of in-depth purpose. So in our next slide, we will talk about how foolish people do not use human form of life properly. And again, this is being explained by Shaunaka Rishi, who criticizes modern civilization. How actually he calls it, like the bullet point says, how modern civilization is not thinking about the higher purpose. How people are passing the days and nights, just sleeping and performing activities that are really for nothing, right? And he calls it the soul-killing civilization. So in this, I was thinking it would be very interesting to read a few verses, just the translations of Canto 2, Chapter 3, where which is called the Pure Devotional Service, the Change in Heart, where Shaunaka Rishi is very fired up, and he's criticizing modern civilization, and he does it in a pretty strong way. So I thought it'll be interesting just to read, which is kind of the subject matter of these verses. Both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone except one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. Do the trees not live? Do the bellows of the blacksmith not breathe? All around us, do the beasts not eat and discharge semen? People who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna, the deliverer from evils. One who has not listened to the messages about the prowess and marvelous acts of the personality of Godhead and has not sung or chanted loudly the worthy songs about the Lord is to be considered to possess ear holes like the holes of snakes and a tongue like the tongues of a frog. The eyes which do not look at the symbolic representations of the personality of Godhead Vishnu are like those printed on the plumes of a peacock, and the legs which do not move to the holy places where the Lord is remembered are considered to be like tree trunks. A person who has not at any time received the dust of the feet of the Lord's pure devotee upon his head is certainly a dead body. And the person who has never experienced the aroma of tulsi leaves from the lotus feet of the Lord is also a dead body, although breathing. Certainly, the heart is steel framed, which, in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, does not change when ecstasy takes place. Tears fill the eyes and the hairs stand on end. O Suta Goswami, your words are pleasing to our minds. Please, therefore, explain this to us as it was spoken by the great devotee Shukdev Goswami, who is very expert in transcendental knowledge and who spoke to Maharaj Pariksit upon being asked. So he gives a pretty good picture of modern civilization, basically. So in the next slide, why did Pariksit Maharaj see and how did he react? So, so how he actually meets what he sees actually, and what he sees in his kingdom. How people were indulging in sinful activities and what he did about it. How did he react? Because he's seeing the symptoms around him, and how is he going to react to that? We're going to hear this. Suta Goswami said, while Maharaj Pariksit was residing in the capital of the Kuru Empire, the symptoms of the age of Kali began to infiltrate within the jurisdiction of the state. When he learnt about this, he did not think the matter very palatable. This did, however, give him a chance to fight. He took up his bow and arrows and prepared himself for military activities. So here in this pulpit, Prabhupada talks about the symptoms of Kali, and what are they? We are quite familiar by now. Taking, all these four sinful activities that we try to avoid, illicit connection with the opposite sex, intoxication, gambling, which is all the root cause of all quarrel. So the citizens, they hate this, trying to fight these things, but they love the cause of these things, right? They're fully addicted, in other words. And Prabhupada explains at length about these four sinful activities and how people, they are so addicted to it that they don't think there's a life without them. What they try to do, actually, what the society tries to do, is that to get rid of these anxieties that are coming in the way of enjoying these four things. But here we see how these great sages, they will speak very bluntly about these things. So when Pariksit Maharaj sees these things happening in his kingdom, he becomes very happy. Actually, he becomes, why? Because he's a Kshatriya king, and he's looking forward for an opportunity to fight, not just uselessly, but fight the agents of Kali Yuga. Why? Because such kings are proud of the fact that they are able to make the people pursue godly life. So in the next slide, Pariksit Maharaj hears glories of his forefathers overwhelmed by devotion. So we're hearing how he's seeing these symptoms. He's going on his horse, and on his chariot, and going on and looking at these symptoms, and he notices them. But on the way, he's being glorified by, and his glorification is connected to his glorification of his forefathers, the Pandavas. And when Pariksit Maharaj hears this glorification, he becomes overwhelmed by devotion. So we're not going to go through all these verses, but he heard about the Pandavas, about his grandfathers being, praised, and how he was himself protected from the powerful heat of the weapon of Ashwatthama. People also foretold about, not foretold, but glorified his great family, the Pritha family, the Kunti side, the Vrishni family. And when the king heard all this, he became more and more satisfied, and he rewarded them with valuable necklaces and clothing. And mainly what pleased him the most is when he heard stories about how Krishna, he became a chariot, a messenger for them, for the Pandavas, and how he became the chariot driver to Arjuna, right? And how he became the friend, even a night watchman. And he acted according to the will of the Pandavas, obeying them like a servant and offering obeisances like one younger in years. When he heard this, Maharaj Pariksit became overwhelmed with devotion to the lotus feet of the Lord. How Krishna can become, show himself in such a role, because he gets controlled by the love of his devotees. And Prabhupada in the Purple very nicely describes how the welcome addresses of those days were so different from today. Now when people flatter each other, they are not full of facts and figures, but they are always, flattery, just untrue things, And so, and also such people are not even rewarded for doing that. It's expected out of them, right? So while Parikshit Maharaj is listening to the glories of his forefathers and of his forefathers, and also as well as Krishna, in the meantime, we're going to hear about the meeting of Dharma, the bull, and Mother Earth, the cow. Okay, so that leads us into our next slide. Why should Dharma, the bull, and Mother Earth, cow, be protected? And that's basically from verse 18. Translation. The personality of religious principle, Dharma, was wandering about in the form of a bull, and he met the personality of earth in the form of a cow, who appeared to grieve like a mother who had lost a child. She had tears in her eyes, and the beauty of her body was lost. Thus, Dharma questioned the earth as follows. So here Prabhupada in the Purport describes very nicely why the bull is and this cow is sacred. The bull, he says, is the emblem of the moral principles or religious principles. So bull is representing Dharma, which means moral Brahmanical principles. And the cow is a representative of Mother Earth. So he explains how when the bull and cow are in a joyful mood, everybody is happy. And how in this present age, in the age of Kali, both the bull and the cow are being slaughtered and eaten up as foodstuff by a class of men who don't understand this Vedic culture. And how the importance of protecting the bull and cow for the good of all human society and for everyone's happiness. So this will lead us to our next slide. Bull inquires, and she guesses Mother Earth's pain looking at the sorry condition of today. So these are a set of questions that Dharma, the bull, he asks from Mother Earth, guessing at why Mother Earth was crying and due to her sorry condition. And I'm going to read off these bullet points and then elaborate on some of these bullet points in the next series of slides. So he's guessing at, the reason for Mother Earth's pain could be the symptoms of Kali Yuga, the internal disease, that how, and we're going to elaborate on that, separation from loved ones, killing of cows for meat, women and children left unprotected, Brahmanas not pure anymore, Kshatriyas also not pure anymore, how they condemn Vedic codes, and general people doing sinful acts. So in our next slide, we'll talk about the first one, the people suffering in Kali Yuga, which really covers the first 2 points. People suffering from anxiety due to internal disease and separation from loved ones. Dharma in the form of bull asked, Madam, are you not hale and hearty? Why are you covered with a shadow of grief? It appears by your face that you have become black. Are you suffering from some internal disease? Or are you thinking of some relatives who is away in a different place? So basically, two of the major symptoms in Kali Yuga we can see is that people are either suffering from some mental disease and they're suffering because of separation from a loved one. And Prabhupada talks about in the purport how people are full of anxieties and one can see it by the faces of these people, and how can see the anxiety in the faces of those people, and how jobs has separated families basically, and how even within the family the father may be separated from the children because he has to travel a long distance to go to work. And that's very typical of this age. It's true. We may or may not see it so much over here, but definitely you can see it in India. I was thinking about Mumbai, where people, due to fathers who have to work like 2 hours away, and they take that subway, the trains, and it takes them like an hour or not more than that to travel to their place, and they come. I mean, they leave like early in the morning, and they don't come back till the children have fallen asleep practically. So these are sufferings of Kali Yuga. And in our next slide, we will talk about the killing of cows for meat. And that is also one of the things that Shaunak Rishi elaborates. I'm sorry. Dharma is speaking to Mother Earth. I have lost my 3 legs and I am now standing on only one only. Are you lamenting for my state of existence? Or are you in great anxiety because henceforward the unlawful meat eaters will exploit you? Or are you in a sorry plight because the demigods are now bereft of their share of sacrificial offerings because no sacrifices are being performed at present? Or are you grieving for the living beings because of their sufferings due to famine and drought? Here, Prabhupada, that I elaborate on and that I show in the slide as bullet points is he talks about how there's 4 classes of people depending on their faith in God. There's the Vaishnavas, the Brahmanas, and the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, Shudras, and then the Malishas, okay, and the Chandalas. And Prabhupada very nicely he explains that these different qualifications of human beings, there is no question of birthright or community. One can acquire these respective qualifications by one's own efforts. So in other words, one can become a Brahmana even though one can be born in a lower class. Prabhupada is writing, thus the son of a Vaishnav can become a Malicha, or the son of a Chandala can become more than a Brahmana, all in terms of their association and intimate relationship with the Lord. And we have examples of that. Very nice point that I like to explain to children and explain to them this understanding how things are not according to their birth or color or the country or citizenship. No, there's plenty of stories in the Bhagavatam to elaborate on that. The story of Vritasura in the 6th canto. He was a demon by birth, but what a great devotee. Story of Bali Maharaj also. So Prabhupada explains in the purport how the meat eaters are generally called malicious, but all meat eaters are not malicious. Those who accept meat in terms of scriptural injunctions are not malicious, but those who accept meat without restriction are called malicious. It's so interesting, this point, I thought. What really the Shastras condemn, and Prabhupada condemn, is the opening of the slaughterhouses, because that's very, very sinful. And this is killing meat without restriction, without applying the scriptural injunctions. Because the Vedas, they recognize that there's going to be 3 types of people, so people in the mode of ignorance will end up eating meat. But what is the proper way to consume that? So that is according to scriptural injunctions. And we know in other sections, Prabhupada talks about what is the Shastras talk about, what is the proper way. By just very sparingly, one can kill, and that too, it must be done in a way where the animal gets benefit of getting a higher life, which means chanting proper mantras by qualified brahmanas. So beef is, Prabhupada is writing, beef is forbidden in the scriptures, and the bulls and cows are offered special protection by the followers of the Vedas. But in this age of Kali, people will exploit the body of the bull and the cow as they like, and thus they will invite sufferings of various types. Okay. So next point um, of the Dharma will be discussed in our next slide. Brahmanas and Kshatriyas will fall from their prescribed duties. This is another very important science, and these are related to the science of Kali Yuga, right? So Brahmanas and Kshatriyas will fall from their prescribed duty. So in other words, Brahmanas are not going to remain as Brahmanas anymore. Text 21. Are you feeling compunction for the unhappy women and children who are left forlorn by unscrupulous persons? Or are you unhappy because the goddess of learning is being handled by Brahmanas addicted to acts against the principles of religion? Or are you sorry to see that the Brahmanas have taken shelter of administrative families that do not respect Brahmanical culture? So Prabhupada first of all writes in the purport how in this age of Kali, women and children will be left neglected and unprotected due to illicit connection with them, right? And how due to that, children will be uncared for. And then he talks about the Brahmanas, how traditionally they're actually very intelligent people, but yet due to, and so they have a capacity to, to take modern education to the topmost rank, but morally they will be fallen. Prabhupada writes, they will be most fallen. And he writes, education and bad character go ill together, but such things will run parallel in Kali Yuga. The administrative heads as a class will condemn the tenets of Vedic wisdom and will prefer to conduct a so-called secular state, and the so-called educated Brahmanas will be purchased by unscrupulous administrators. Even a philosopher and writer of many books on religious principles may also accept an exalted post in the government, which denies all moral codes of the Shastras. So in the Vedic culture, Brahmanas were actually restricted from accepting that service. Okay, and then going to our next slide, Dharma, the bull is asking about how the general populace will not follow rules and regulations of proper human conduct. Is that what the reason was for her suffering? Text 22. The so-called administrators are not bewildered by the influence of this age of Kali, and thus they have put the state affairs into disorder. Are you now lamenting this disorder? Now the general populace does not follow the rules and regulations for eating, sleeping, drinking, mating, etc., and they are inclined to perform such anywhere and everywhere. Are you unhappy because of this? So first, Dharma is asking about talking about the fall down of the leaders and the Brahmins who are meant to give advice. Next, in this verse, he talks about the people in general and they fall down. And also there's no protection. He also talked about the lack of protection of cows. Right? So what are the symptoms of the people? What are the people indulging in now? It's already been explained quite a bit in terms of symptoms of Kali Yuga, very connected with that, how people are going to show beastly behavior, which means animal behavior. Things that are allowed in the animal life is not allowed in human life. Why? Because there's certain codes of conduct. So we can't imitate the animals because animals do everything in the open. It's not just we behave like that. And that's what Prabhupada is criticizing in this purport. And then he talks about actually the influence of the age of Kali on our innocent children. That's very important, interesting point that he's talking about, how the symptoms of this is affecting our children. And then he quotes the story of Ajamal, how he was so innocent, growing up in a very pure family, and how just by being exposed to looking at this man and woman, embracing one another, he was attracted. And he became a victim of all kinds of debaucheries. So how he fell down from a position of Brahman. So what to speak of our children who are exposed to this kind of thing everywhere and anywhere. Right? So we have to be very, very careful and be aware, and give them ways of counteracting this by taking up the process of devotion service. So in the next slide, Mother Earth replies. And she replies, first of all, in verses where she's feeling the separation from Lord Krishna. And she begins by describing Krishna's wonderful qualities that I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's going to take a long time, but that is available for you all, everyone, to go through in text 26 and 30. And I'll read the translation of what she's saying. O Dharma, whatever you have inquired from me shall be known to you. I shall try to reply all those questions. Once you too were maintained by your four legs and you increased happiness all over the universe. And then in 4 verses, she describes the beautiful quality of all the beautiful qualities of Krishna. And it's important to go through them and understand them because by understanding Krishna's quality, then we can appreciate Krishna, right? And we know that we are putting ourselves in the care of the right person. Because why has Krishna got these amazing qualities? It's because he has no need. He has no need to exploit others. He's fully self-satisfied. So in our next slide, Mother Earth feels overburdened by atheistic kings. Again, this is all in the form of a reply to Dharma's questions. O personality of religion, I was greatly overburdened by the undue military phalanxes arranged by atheistic kings, and I was relieved by the grace of the personality of Godhead. Similarly, you were also in a distressed condition, weakened in your standing strength, and thus he also incarnated by his internal energy in the family of the Yadus to relieve you. So she's feeling that one of the reasons of her suffering and crying is also because she's becoming overburdened by atheistic kings, which means basically atheistic rulers, because common man looks up to a ruler, somebody higher. And if such people are fallen, the whole society falls down. And in this purport, Prabhupada writes that how the asuras want to enjoy life of sense gratification, even at the cost of others' happiness. In order to fulfill his ambition, the asuras, especially atheistic kings or state executive heads, try to equip themselves with all kinds of deadly weapons to bring about a war in a peaceful society. They have no ambition other than personal aggrandizement, and thus Mother Earth feels overburdened by such undue increases of military strength. By increase of Asuric population, those who follow the principles of religion become unhappy, especially the devotees or devas. In such a situation, the personality of Godhead incarnates to vanquish the unwanted asuras and to establish the true principles of religion. This was the mission of Lord Shri Krishna. So this is where the chapter ends. She's missing because Krishna is not here and all these symptoms have appeared, she's missing the Lord and how he's not gracing Mother Earth with his footprints. Okay, so I stop here. Radhika, would you like to take over?
I'll just share my presentation. Okay. Hare Krishna. Good morning. Wanted to first start out with some sharings from around the world of how the book is being used. Srimad Bhagavatam, a comprehensive guide for young readers, and it's very encouraging for us. So here are pictures from Rati Preshta Mataji from New Delhi. She is at the Dwarka Center, the Dwarka Temple. And I previously shared pictures of her at home. She's covering chapter 7 with her daughters. But here in the temple, they're working on chapter 3 from the book. And you can see that they're working on the dirty heart and the clean heart exercise from the book. So chapter 3 talks about how a child can understand the whole concept of how the heart becomes very dirty with all these anger, jealousy, ego, lust. And if Krishna is in the center of our heart and we keep Krishna in the center of our activities, that our heart is pure. All ages, and they're continuing to having some and here's another activity, and it looks like this was assigned as a homework, so they came up with a comic strip of here's a child that's talking about Krishna, hearing about Krishna, remembering Krishna, and goes back to Godhead, and also discussions. And then from Iowa, Shamarupini Mataji has shared these pictures of her two children, Balaram and Subhadra, and then Ahana and Agrima. They do these activities together in the homes. They try to do it once a week. They are working on chapter 3 as well. So there's a nice activity where you take the words from the book and you try to classify which particular avatar the words pertain to. And there's also a very nice activity of creating that. And the result is beautiful. Look at that. All the planets. And they've depicted how Mahavishnu lies down. Really, really beautiful creation what we all created. Okay, moving on to chapter 16. So just 1 second, I have a message here that says I need to stop the spotlight, change the spotlight. So thank you for that message. Let me go back to sharing my screen. Okay, so let's begin chapter 16 from the book. There's a nice story summary provided in the beginning of the chapter. One day, while King Pariksit was sitting in his palace, a messenger came with some very bad news. "Oh, King Pariksit, I have some bad news," said the messenger. "What is it?" asked the king. "Well," the messenger replied, "I was walking through the streets of your kingdom and..." "Yes? What did you see?" "I saw that your kingdom has been infiltrated by some of the symptoms of the age of Kali." So, page summary followed by key messages that are grouped by themes and by verses. So the theme of the qualities of Sri Krishna is in verses 13 through 16 and then 26 through 30. So they're not always, in order, but also the book very nicely groups verses according to themes. And then the key message there is Lord Krishna's innumerable transcendental qualities make him the unique personality of Godhead. By remembering, hearing about, and glorifying them, we become character descriptions. So a lot of these activities may be pertinent for perhaps a younger audience, but are easily modifiable for an older audience as well. So this is a nice discussion to ask the children, have you heard of any of these characters before? What do you know about them? And perhaps can be done as a whole group or a small group where with a partner they're sharing what they know about Maharaj Pariksit and about Kali, the personality. And then points are given to complete the discussion or add on. Understanding the story asks some nice multiple choice questions. And then higher thinking questions to deepen understanding and really delve into the purpose. So in verse 20, the importance of performance of sacrifices is given. In Kali Yuga, what is the best form of sacrifice? Or what is the deathless nectar that is described in this chapter, and why is it described in this way? Give some examples of where Krishna has demonstrated some of the wonderful qualities that are listed in verses 26 to 30. It can be discussed orally or particularly with an older audience, given in writing. And then we move on to some of the activities that bring the Bhagavatam to life. So action activities to get you moving, save Dharma and Bhumi game. So this requires 4+ people to play. 2 people are Dharma and Bull, and they both stand on one leg, holding hands in the center of a circle of people holding hands. And the activity also suggests if you don't have enough people to create a circle, you can make a circle around them with chalk. And then leave one space open for Maharaj Pariksit to come in and out. And outside the circle, one place a part of Kali. And Pariksit has 1 minute to go tag Kali and enter into the circle to save Dharma and Bhumi. So you might be familiar with this game. It's a modification of a pretty popular game. Kali Yuga jump rope. So we've had these jump rope activities in a few of the chapters. And here's a nice poem that can be chanted. And the challenge is, how long can you stay without touching the rope? 2 people turn the rope and 1 jumps. So it's at least 3 people in the game. Kali Kali, very bad, hurting Dharma, Bhumi's bad. Pariksit came and chased away. Kali Yuga couldn't stay. Dharma, Dharma, 3 legs down, austerity, cleanliness and mercy gone. Truthfulness is all that's left, and Kali's trying to get that. Bhumi, Bhumi, very sad, Krishna's gone and Kali's bad. Lord Chaitanya came, don't cry, Harinam will make you smile. Pariksit, Krishna's devotee, saving Dharma and Bhumi. Thank you for your example of serving Krishna to the Analogy activity brings out the scholar in you. So in the purport to verses 26 to 30, Prabhupada talks of this analogy. By equality, the Lord is equally kind to everyone, as the sun is equal in distributing its rays over everyone. Yet there are many who don't take advantage of the sun's rays. So similarly, Krishna is guaranteeing protection for all, but certain unfortunate persons don't accept this proposition. So they suffer miseries. So there's encouragement to discuss the analogy further. And moving on to the Lord is equal, memorizing a shloka, so memorizing this particular shloka, which is actually from Bhagavad Gita 9:29. So, often in the book, there'll be references or tie-ins with other shlokas and other scriptures, particularly Bhagavad Gita, which is really nice to connect the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita in that way. So, and then some prompting questions. How would you feel if Krishna were holding your hand right now? When you are sad, do you think of Krishna? Do you like to do good things and help others? And can you think of examples of the Lord shows his kindness? So the conclusion is, if we just try to fully serve the lotus feet of Krishna, then he will look after us very well. Krishna is our best friend. So we must always remember him and never forget him. He will help us in bad times as well as good times. A popsicle stick puzzle. This is really cute, where you take 5 to 6 popsicle sticks and you lay them flat and you draw something on it. So here there's a picture of a cow, and the activity also says that you could draw a bull, and then you jumble it up, and the other person has to put the puzzle together. A bull poster. Using the picture of a bull, make a poster of how the bull represents Dharma or religion. And if the children can write, have them write the title Dharma the Bull. And if not, make a block letter title and have them color in. So options are given for different ages. And have the children write the 4 pillars of religion: truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, and austerity, drawing arrows to each of the 4 legs. And to help the children understand what the 4 pillars mean, there's an encouragement to learn and listen a particular song. And then discuss how Dharma means following God's laws. Make a list, bull helps us by, and then have the children draw, write, or dictate the values of the bull. There's also a suggestion to read This Is My Cow or Toil in the Sun books by Urmila Mataji. And resource 3, poster for children to work with. So resource 2 was the bull poster, and here's resource 3, which will again be used in another activity. So the verse that we chant, Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya, every time we make an offering, is really nice to for the children to know what it means. So I printed this and my children colored it and we pasted it in our altar room so that they learn, oh, here's the meaning. Let me offer my respectful obeisance to Lord Krishna, who's the worshipful deity for all Brahminical men, who's the well-wisher for cows and the Brahmins, who's always benefiting the whole world. So it's a nice activity for the children to draw that connection between the prayer that they chant when offering and this particular chapter and the emphasis that is laid on cow protection here. Make a booklet called Signs of Kali Yuga by cutting out 2 sheets of A4 paper in half and stapling them into a book shape. And then write the words below on one side, illustrate or write words to reflect the meaning of each of these signs. So the signs are people argue and fight. Animals are unprotected. So it's a real nice activity to graphically depict this concept. And again, going back to resource 3, print out and color in the picture of Krishna with a cow and put it up on the wall to help meditate on how dear the cows and Brahmins are to the Lord. And then learn this verse. And when do you hear this verse being recited? So we discussed that. Okay, critical thinking activities, environmental action plan. This is really nice. We launched into a whole discussion of climate change and environmental sustainability and the green revolution. So the description of the activity given is the earth is an actual personality that has taken the form of a cow. What does that teach us about how to care for the environment? Assess yourself and try to determine how much you care about the earth and your environment, and create an action plan about how you can improve. Do you litter? Do you recycle? Do you try not to waste water, electricity, and particularly paper? That's one big thing in my house. Do you finish your prasadam or do you waste it? And you try to walk or bike to the park, rather than taking a car. So these are some nice questions. And then the earth was upset because Krishna had left. So how can we make her feel happy by invoking the presence of the Lord? So Harinam and Padayatra and chanting regularly can just change the environment of the whole world. Okay, how sacrifice makes people happy. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, okay. So this is resource 4. There are 2 activities that are related to resource 4. And the topic is how sacrifice makes people happy. And there's a picture given regarding how sacrifice makes people happy. So here's someone performing a yajna and chanting, so it's Harinam yajna. And Vishnu is pleased, and naturally all the demigods supply what they need to supply. And then the person has enough to eat, and abundant sustenance is provided to all of us as long as Harinam goes on. So discuss concepts such as how demigods control everything in this world, including the sun, rain, etc., and how by pleasing Krishna, everyone is pleased, including the demigods, and they are servants of Krishna. How evaporation works to create rain. So we use this to study the water cycle in our home. And we did evaporation, condensation, precipitation, all of that, launching off of this activity. So I really like how I'm able to draw from the Bhagavatam, science lessons and social studies lessons, because of how much help I get from this book. And after completing the how sacrifice makes people happy exercise, then describe orally in your own words what is happening in the picture. And then write these sentences to make a caption below each picture, writing the entire, a paragraph about how this process works. So it's encouraging writing and working on grammar. Okay, we move on to poetry. Poetry activities, poem and tasks. So description is Bhumi, Mother Earth in the form of a cow, tells Dharma, the bull of religion, how sorry she is to see that Lord Krishna has left the earth. She describes many transcendental qualities that are within the Lord. Some of them are described in the poem below. First, read the poem and then complete the tasks that follow. So here's a nice poem, The Transcendental Qualities of the Lord. It's impossible to count the qualities of the Lord. All over the universe, his character is adored. Truthful, clean, and self-satisfied are but a few. If we want to advance in spiritual life, we should practice them too. It's impossible to count the qualities of the Lord. His personality is so wonderful, it cannot be ignored. Peaceful, kind, and equality are but a few. If we want to advance in spiritual life, we should practice them too. It's impossible to count the qualities of the Lord. Learn some, and many benedictions it will award. Responsibility, control, and steadiness are but a few. If we want to advance in spiritual life, we should practice them too. A really nice rhyme. And then the task is to circle or highlight and or express orally all the words that rhyme in each verse. And then find the qualities of the Lord and highlight or circle these, and learning what these words mean. So perhaps children don't know what steadiness means, or equality, self-satisfied. So this is a nice way to learn new words. Find words that are repeated throughout the poem and highlight or circle them. Create a decorative border. So we printed this out and we created a decorative border and stuck it on a sheet of paper. Moving on to keywords and crossword. So there are these words given: infiltrate, conquer, dharma, valuable, symptoms, and save. And the children can write what they mean, look them up in a dictionary, which more and more Google is becoming our dictionary nowadays, and we don't even have the skills to like alphabetically look up words in a dictionary. And then also using these in a sentence. So this is something that I assign to the children. So they take out their notebook and then they use infiltrate, sentence of their own. Crossword. There are some clues given for cross and down. And here we go. Of course, we have lots of points in this chapter. How Pariksit received the age of Kali. In the age of Satya Yuga, Dharma stands on all four legs. People do Ashtanga Yoga are peaceful and non-envious. The Yuga avatar is white and everyone's Krishna conscious. In the age of Treta Yuga, Dharma stands on just three legs. People perform fire yagyas, strictly following the Vedas. The Yuga avatar is red and everyone's very pious. In the age of Dwapara Yuga, Dharma stands on just two legs. People worship Krishna in the temples in great happiness. The Yoga avatar is black and people are mostly in goodness. In the age of Kali, Dharma stands on just one leg. People chant the Maha Mantra to receive the knowledge and bliss. The Yoga avatar is golden who appears to teach us this. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So this is, again, I keep referring to Bhaktivinoda Thakur because he made the philosophy of the Vedas so accessible to the common folk by converting it into poems and songs. And so I really like being able to teach the children about which is the avatar for the particular yuga and how many legs, of dharma are still remaining, and what is the process of self-realization just on the basis of this poem. So those three things are covered really beautifully in this poem. And then we have answers to the questions that have specific answers, because not all questions do. Some have many appropriate answers. And we know that the book is available via Amazon in the US or UK, and via Golden Age Media in India. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now and allow participants to unmute themselves and ask questions. So please ask away. If you could raise your hand, and I can call on you. So, question, there's a question in the chat. The presentations that Aruddha Mataji is making are all on the Google Drive folder that I've shared. I've already uploaded the chapter 16 one as well. So you can access Mataji's presentations. There's a lot of work that has been put in, and it's a really great preaching tool. I know of devotees that are using them in their Sunday school, especially right now because it's distance learning. So it's really helpful to have a PowerPoint on your Zoom screen. But there's a question about the presentations that I make, and I'm sorry, those are not available just because, this is copyrighted material from the book. So If you buy the book, you can have access to all of these activities. Also because it's meant to be a workbook, so it's not really useful if I share these activities in a PowerPoint with you, because the children will need their own workbooks to do the activities. Any other questions? Okay, nice to have you join with me, Mataji. Thank you for sharing your wonderful pictures. That's the way.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you for the presentations. So Mataji, I had one question regarding, Ali, the Shudra dressed as a king.
Yes. Oops.
You got muted. Okay.
Okay, it could be like any class, it's not that only Shudras, they have to, do all the abominable activities. So is it like, because of it was during Pariksit Maharaj's reign, so that's why, it's Shudras are mostly like, supposed to be considered to do such activities. So I wanted to understand that a little bit.
Yeah, very good question. A very fine point here. Because what Prabhupada describes in the purport is that during Parikshit Maharaj's time, during those days, there was no symptom of Kali Yuga. So Shudra like is emphasized because it was so unheard of. You see, it was like it was so golden, everything was so wonderful that these symptoms were. That's why in the next chapter we're going to hear where Kali is. When he said that Kali wants a place to live, right? And so Parikshit Maharaj says, okay, these are the places you can live, the four sinful places. But he says, but wait a minute, you don't have places like that. Where am I going to go? These things are unheard of in your kingdom. Then he gives gold, So in other words, these symptoms and these places, these qualities were not present. They were not there. Everybody was so much in the mode of goodness, you see? And that's why this word is emphasized, Shudra-like, is because it was so uncommon. It was so unpopular. And then Prabhupada makes it very clear. What is this meaning of Shudra? It is a Brahmana can be a Shudra, by his quality. If he's not acting like a Brahmana, simple, It's also known as Kshatriya, Shudra-like Kshatriyas. The Kshatriya is not supposed to be Shudra-like. He's not supposed to have all these qualities of ignorance. He's supposed to be more closer to the Brahmanical side, But yet he's displaying. Why? Because of this effects of this age, you see. So basically, Shudra means to be infused with these qualities of, ignorance. Basically, it's the mode of ignorance where people are indulging in all these four symptoms. Okay, so you explain that to your child. Why this point of Shudra is being emphasized and so strongly, spoken is because of the fact. And I like to emphasize this point because this point is very important. Not so much here, maybe, but in India, especially, where this caste system is there. So I like to emphasize that, this and inculcate in my children this quality of equality, how people should not be seen on the basis of body. Okay.
Thank you, Mataji. And the one point I like very much was you were telling about how people have to travel long distances for work. Even yesterday, I was listening to Chandramauri Maharaj. Even he was saying the same thing, like he was sharing how he knew a person who was traveling from Mumbai to Pune every day, 8 hours up and down. And how like human life, we are just spending, doing all these things instead of, doing devotional service. So, it's really resonated with me today because even yesterday I heard and even today you were saying the same point. So thank you very much, Mataji.
Well, yeah, Prabhupada, he's very much emphasizes this point. And then also in one place, he's giving a story about a child, a funny story about a child that one day he asked his mother, when his father was home or didn't go to work or something, who is this person, mother? He actually hadn't seen his father for the longest time because by the time his father came home, he was fast asleep. So she's saying, who is this mother? So it was, yeah, so it's really bad sometimes.
Thank you, Mataji.
Question. Any other questions? Yes, Kalandi Sundari Mataji. So you're muted, Kalandi.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Please accept my humble obeisances from Aruddha Mataji, Radhika Mataji. Mataji, I have a question. Like yesterday, reading the Bhagavatam about this, how Lord Krishna came to Dwarika and everybody welcoming, and the prostitute, they also came and welcoming, but they are also devotee. But how to describe the children about what does prostitute mean and what is that? It's very difficult to make them understand.
Yeah, I remember somebody had asked me this question in one of the classes. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, the prostitutes of those Vedic times were different from these prostitutes of today in terms of the fact that some of them were well versed in Shastra, like they knew what is, the moral principles and all that, but yet they did not exactly follow it, because they were not following one of those principles. They were doing illicit connection with men. So in that way, they were condemned. But they were also, it shows the equality in terms of how, in spite of the degradation of their work, they were still, treated. They had still access to devotional service, and we see that in so many stories. Pingala, in the 11th canto, right? How she became such a high grade devotee just with one realization suddenly one day, when she had that realization. We heard of Chintamani, the prostitute whom Bibamangal Thakur, she became his guru, by giving very good instructions to him. It led him to Krishna. Her words led him to Krishna, right? So they came from very good families and good. They were high on the social status, by the way, during that time, in terms of, because people understood that this is their profession, but they still were quite. And the other thing to understand is that, okay, this is what it is as I'm thinking, is that prostitution was very well accepted in Vedic society. The reason is because when men they wanted to have more connection, illicit connection with women, they knew that this is the place to go. Like they did not take women from society and make them, and put them in that position, and then leave them, drop them to fend for themselves after even giving them children. And then the society doesn't know, nobody gives protection to such women, and the society doesn't either. And they are left alone. In other words, it was so when men needed more relationship, they knew this is the place to go. So it was very well organized that they did not pollute other, innocent people, just out of whim that you see in society today. People, women are raped just because somebody takes fancy on them, or whatever. It may be from both sides, whatever. But the point is that they were recognized as necessities in society for those men who are, fallen. Find the necessity of not following the principles that Lord Ram put down, one wife, that we've fallen in Kali Yuga. That's why polygamy is banned in Kali Yuga, because the people are not capable. Men are not capable of maintaining, more than one, wife. Even to manage one family is a big deal nowadays, right? You see, so everything in Vedic culture had a reason, a very good and deep reason, which is not prevalent, which cannot be followed today. So therefore, things are banned, But we have to understand that this was a necessity that society, Vedic culture recognized, and therefore the way they looked at prostitutes was quite different. it was still away from decent society, obviously. This is not Vedic culture. Vedic culture is to actually, get married and have a proper family. But yet they were necessary, because that's the wonderful thing about this Vedic culture is it recognizes all types of people.
Mm.
It's not fanatic, okay, there's going to be people who are going to be like that, who will run after, women other than their wives. So here it is, if this is what you want, this is a proper way to do it, you see.
And another question, Mata, I heard, but I don't know, which is connected to Shastra or not. Like Maharaj Pariksit, when want to stop the Kali, and then he won the place, different place like intoxication, go. Then they show that the Kali jump on the Pariksit Maharaj crown, because crown was this gold is there on his head, and that's the reason he's bewildered, and the snake he put on.
Okay, actually, I haven't understood what you said. I don't know why it's not clear. I'm not able to hear. But is it regarding some story that's not in the Bhagavatam?
No,
Something
about the Pariksit Maharaj, the how Kali entered.
Yes, okay.
But first question is that he is a pure devotee. He can stop that, right?
Yeah.
That
Okay.
is, and second question is that correct? Like Kali asking the place, and he give one place in gold,
Yeah.
and therefore,
Well, that will come in the next chapter. But the first question is, why did he not stop it? Why did he not stop it? So it also shows, and that's what the question from the Shaunak Rishi also, that why he was only punished. If he had just killed, it's like if he was just killed, it would have taken care of the problem. Why did he even allow him to live? You see? But that shows the magnanimity of a king, his God consciousness, because Kali surrendered to Parikshit Maharaj. And when somebody surrenders, then you don't kill that person. It's just a rule in Kshatriya. It's a Kshatriya rule. And even Krishna follows that rule. Even he says that even the worst demon or Asura, if he surrenders to him, he's bound to give him shelter.
Sure.
So therefore it shows his godly character, his compassion. But he would not tolerate it, though. In other words, after Parikshit Maharaj's rule, Kali came, full blast, right? So in other words, it's both sides are there. Kali was meant to come, and this great soul Parikshit could understand that nobody can avert Kali. He has to come, but yet it doesn't mean that one doesn't take steps to stop it. So there's both sides there. Okay.
And
They
Mata,
accept Krishna's plan. They accept Krishna's plan, but at the same time, they take steps. Yes.
Mata, and the thing about this homeschool thing, Mata, is it okay? Like you told all thing you do together.
Now say that again. You have to speak louder and clearly. Yeah.
Hold on. You
Sorry.
hear me now? You hearing me?
Yeah.
But about the homeschool thing, one thing you told that all thing you do together, Arati or So Mataji, now I figure out something to finish my round early. So I wake up before they wake up, and I try to finish my round. And by the time they come to shower and do everything and come here, then they chant 2-3 round with me, and then we do. Then Arati do, And then mostly my bigger one do Arati, because I have 2 round left. Then I have to cook breakfast for my Prabhu will go. So I tell you do Arati, I finish my round, because 2-3 round maybe left. So is it okay somehow to adjust, and as they grow up, then I try to do more nicely how you told.
Yeah. You try to adjust. You have to make it flexible. Whatever works for them, you will do. So your sincerity is there. You're very sincere. So you work it out. You work out the way it works for them. And you can do a short version of it. If you cannot chant all your rounds, you try to find time during the day when they are busy with something. Like try to be flexible and don't be too hard on yourself either. Because if you try to be very perfect life, it doesn't work either. You become too tired and things like that. So see how they are soaking it in. if there's less time for morning program, then try to make it up later in the day, you know, by chanting or something in the evening. So, okay.
Thank you, Mother. Thank you so much.
I'm not seeing any other questions. We can give it a couple of minutes, see if anything comes in.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Dandot Pranam Mataji. Aruddha Mataji and Radhika Mataji. Mataji, I have one question. My daughter is 13 years age. She likes to chant, but she's not interested in listening any lectures. I mean, right now, Bhagavatam for children, I made her to join, but she's saying, I'm chanting, no, why to listen all these things? She's asking like that for me. I told it is good, better to listen, and because chanting will become more good. But it seems that she's not convinced. I know I need to answer her rationally. I mean, not scripturally. So how to convince her, Mataji? That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's something that comes gradually. The conviction, you know, especially if she's hearing more about it now and at this point in her life, it just takes time. And be patient with her. You know, start Bhagavatam reading with her and discussion with her, and make it short initially, and then you can, you know, make it longer, because then she will become attracted to the whole thing. So it just takes time. Radhika, do you have any input here, or?
Attraction like the honeybee, you know, so as the attraction grows on her own, you know, she might be attracted to hearing, and if she feels any kind of push, she might rebel, because children, like all of us, have a strong input on. That's all.
Okay. Okay, Mataji. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
it just takes time. You know, it takes time. Don't lose your patience, and gradually she will develop an attraction. Give her association of you know, of the, when now with the COVID pandemic, you know, going away, you know, you can take her to the temple. Give her more association of other like-minded children, you know, the temple and events over there, the programs. It's a collective thing, you know, where she gets more and more attracted. But definitely reading of Srimad Bhagavatam is very important. So try to do it with her. Give her some attention where she can read and discuss with you, or with a small group of children, if that works better. I know Radhika doing it with another family. Sometimes even with another family, you can try that. But if that doesn't work, do it for yourself. Do it with her, you know?
Okay, Mataji. Thank you so much for your valuable suggestion, Mataji.
Okay. Any closing comments, Mataji?
Oh, yes, thank you all for joining. I'm sorry we missed last week, just to do something urgent that happened, but we will continue next chapter next time. Thank you. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.